Hey everyone, Jason Womack here. I want to thank you so much for getting your own copy of Your Best Just Got Better. Maybe you bought a few copies. That's fantastic. Totally okay. Remember, you can get this on Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, iBooks from the Apple Store. It will be in bookstores after February 7th of 2012. If you have any questions, please, I cannot wait to hear from you. If you want to text me to my iPhone, if you want to tweet something out there, the hashtag we're using is hashtag better. And I just really am focused on making this not just a book people read or an idea they capture, but a movement that we continue. 2012 is a year of making things better, and this book ideally will give you some ideas that you can move forward and do that with. So, for those of you who pre-ordered a copy of the book, I wanted to spend a little bit of time. This was the live webinar that I did that some of you attended, and the others I promised I would get you a copy of this. So, I've made this recording and put it up as an unlisted movie on YouTube. Should you want to share this with anybody, fantastic, but this is not going to be on the public youtube.com/Jason Womack page. This is just for you and your circle of influence. And of course, if you know Oprah Winfrey or any other fantastic model of moving things toward making things better, let them know that this exists. All right, let's dive in. 3 areas that we talked about extensively in that webinar. The first one is your own psychology, your own psychographic view toward improvement, productivity, organization, development. Right next to that, we're going to take a look at the technology approach. So once I start to get ideas about where I'm going or where I'm growing, what are the tools? What's the gear that I'm going to use? Right now, you are using a technology, this video. You may be writing some things down, technology, pen and paper. You may also be wondering who you're going to talk to about this or who you're going to ask for support in this, and that is the sociology of productivity. So those are the 3 things that I'm most focused on right now. The psychology would be how I think and plan. The technology would be how do I organize that thinking and planning. And then on the sociology side is what is the culture of improvement? What is the culture that I work in with and around the people that I work with and around? So, of course, anything that I talk about has got to be involved in or engaged in this concept of organizing myself so that I can manage time. And there's actually a myth to time management that I'm working to break this myth. I'm working to bust this myth. What is that myth? The myth is that you'll ever get everything done. The myth of time management is that you would want to get everything done. I don't want to get everything done. I want my calendar to be built and stacked. I want meetings to be there on the calendar. I want events to be engaged in. I want an email inbox that's full of opportunities and possibilities. I want a to-do list that's ongoing and that's keeping me directed and my focus going forward. So what we're going to look at is what it means to be a productivity entrepreneur. Now, here's an interesting little concept. You can work in an organization with hundreds or even thousands of colleagues around the world. You're still your own productivity entrepreneur. You are figuring out and identifying what it's going to take to get you from step A to step B to step C to step Z. When you're going from here to there, you've got to have a path to go down or create that path to go down. So I'll encourage you, as you're about to pick up this book, Your Best Just Got Better, list the 5 words that would describe you as a productivity entrepreneur, as someone who's creating a system and a process, as creating something so that you can engage in those things that you need to engage in even more and to achieve the goal. Right? The goal of time management, as I understand it, is to have an idea like I've never had that idea before. is to be able to look at something from a new vantage point, from a new perspective. And it might help to start with the perspective that we're at, to start where we are. So if you think of the word productivity, before you go to the dictionary, before you go to Wikipedia, before you go look this up or ask someone, I'll highly encourage you to take out a piece of paper, take out a pen, and write down maybe 3 or 4 or even 5 sentences of what the word productivity actually means to you. And by the way, if you are a manager or a leader, if you're a founder of a company, if you're head of a household, you may want to share your definition with the people around you. Let me share a definition of mine. Let me share a feeling I have about what productivity means and why I would want to be engaged in that at any level. Using effective workflow management habits so that you can move forward on the most important things. Now, when you get a copy of your book, Your Best Just Got Better, you're going to see me write about this so that concept. I think it's really important for people to engage in a reason for being productive. And for me, that most important things concept is really why I want to get engaged in the first place. So as you're diving into and thinking about a new year, a new you, new opportunities, possibilities, projects you're going to take on, remember that there are these 4 extremely limited resources. And by extremely limited resources, I mean they're finite. We only have so much of these. We only have so much of this thing before we start getting too expanded, too stretched, too far apart in our approach to productivity and workflow. Take this one, time. Now, when I was growing up, I was told that there were 24 hours in a day. Remember, Jason, there's only 24 hours in a day. And then I learned that there were 168 hours in a week. Actually, a quick aside, when I was in college, my first year, I actually took a time management class. And the teacher passed out an 11 by 17 inch piece of paper that had 7 columns, and it had 24 rows, and it had a total of 168 blocks. And what we had to do was on Monday morning, we were to fill out the next 167 blocks, because we were in class right then. We were to fill in the next 167 blocks of time, hour by hour, what we were going to be doing over the next 7 days. Let me just tell you, that did not always work for me. This current concept, this one is. There are 96 15-minute blocks of time in a day. Now, research as I'm seeing it says that we should be sleeping about 7 hours a night. So if I take those 7 hours and I subtract that from the 96 15-minute blocks, well, now I'm down to 68 15-minute blocks. How long is your commute? You know, I was having lunch with a client of mine today in New York, and she spends 10 15-minute blocks. It's 75 minutes each way. She spends 10 15-minute blocks just getting to work every morning. She said that during the day, she's got standing meetings each day that are about 2 hours long. That leaves her with 50 15-minute blocks. In fact, we could keep going through the exercise, and I highly encourage you to. But here's what I found. Most of the people that I get to work with, at the end of a day, they only have 20, maybe 25 15-minute blocks to get their important work done. Now, if you only had 20 15-minute blocks to get your work done, would you want to use those blocks just a little bit differently? I would. So now you can start to take a look at really being an arbiter and filtering what comes across your time. Hey, let me give you this little statistic. If all you have, let's say it's 25, if all you have tomorrow is 25 15-minute blocks, and one person that you work with is late to a meeting by 15 minutes, they just used 4% of your day. 4% of your day is gone because they were 15 minutes late to a meeting. Interesting thought. Okay, that second resource that I was talking about, energy. Energy is your mental and physical energy and its impact on a productive day. Now, I know for myself that if I sleep well one night, if I eat well one day, if I exercise right during the morning, my energy level is higher. I can get more things done faster. if I take care of my needs, if I focus on the more important things, if I use my energy at appropriate intervals. Let me ask you this. Do you know anyone who's a morning person, right? They look like this when they wake up in the morning. Versus, do you know anyone that kicks into gear later in the afternoon, maybe even the night owls out there? Well, what we found is that when people work in accordance with their energy cycle, they're more productive, they're higher performers, they're nicer to be around than if people try to do their difficult or challenging work at their off time. So part of the energy equation is knowing when you're at your best and working in accordance with that. The next thing here is that idea of focus. The latest and loudest get most of your attention, right? If you attend a meeting and the other person sits down and puts their BlackBerry face up so that as you're meeting, you can see that blinking light, blinking light, blinking light, meaning that they have an email in their BlackBerry system, their focus will be compromised. We will tend to look at and really engage in what the latest and loudest things are. I was actually talking with someone recently, and they were saying, Jason, how often do you re-up your annual goals? How often do you re-up your business plan? And I don't know if it's necessarily redoing that or renewing those things, but it might be reviewing those things. And by putting my focus on where I'm going, where I am and where I've been, I might be able to move a little bit of energy and use my time more effectively toward those things that I'm most focused on. That fourth limited resource is what I call the ecosystem of productivity. How you can use gear and set up your environment to be most productive during the day. How do you use all of this stuff? How do you go to this place and be as productive and effective and efficient as possible so that indeed you're achieving that goal of productivity, of getting the most important things done? Now, a couple things to note about this. Number one, we're going to address each one of these. I'm going to give you a few ideas about what you might be able to experiment with and do. The second most important thing here is we're going to go in the reverse order of what I just explained. And by the way, I do this in the book as well. I explain time, energy, focus, and ecosystem. But right now, we're going to look at how you set up your ecosystem so that it affects your focus, your energy, and your time. So let's start with this first one. What notes to write when? That is, if anybody watching this video right now is writing things down as you're listening and watching, my question is, what made it to the paper? What made it to your notebook? And there's really two kinds of things that will make it to the workbook, that'll make it to that place. On the left-hand side, you see a bunch of nouns, ideas, concepts, and things. And on the right-hand side of this, you see a bunch of verbs, actions, to-dos, and tasks, follow-ups, perhaps. And what we found is that the people who write down nouns tend to be focused on the design of things, the vision of where they're going, the process to get there. The verbs are focused on the actions to take, the tasks to delegate, for example. And so when I ask you what to write down when, the next few meetings that you attend, consider engaging in this way so that you get the best information you can. Oh, by the way, this isn't just paper. This is digital as well. Well, if you take a look here, this is a picture of my email inbox, and down the left-hand column is the from column, right? Those are the nouns of the people or places the emails came from. And then on the right-hand side is the subject, the noun of what it is that they're writing about. Presenter update, reminder, Evernote, etc. I don't know if you knew this, but many email systems actually allow you to edit the email subject line of an incoming email. Take a look here. I changed those emails from the nouns of the subject line to the verbs of my next actions. So all of a sudden, instead of looking at an inbox of things that I need to think about more, I look at an inbox of actions to take. Here's my second prompt. How do you stay informed? If there's a part of your job that you need to be in contact with by paper, by phone, by digital, by spreadsheets, by conversations, by time, how do you stay engaged and get the information you need? Hopefully by now you've heard of or are using a tool called Google Alerts. And what you're looking at here is down the left-hand side. Here is the list of topics that I'm interested in. You've got the name of my classes that I teach. You've got technologies that I'm looking at. You have universities that I'm speaking at, etc., etc. So for example, if I take this one that says Mastering Workplace Performance, there in the middle, that's the name of the class that I teach, I want only the best results once a day emailed to my inbox. So all of a sudden now I can set up any kind of a Google search that I might want to do on a regular basis, and instead of having to remember to do that search, Google will send me an email every morning with anywhere that that particular term has been mentioned. For example, when it comes to productivity and time management, I'm very interested in those two topics. One day when I got this alert, I saw in the middle here there's an article called Wasting Time Can Make You a Star at Work, and that was published in Forbes.com. Well, in fact, that article was written about my book, Your Best Just Got Better. I found out that my book was mentioned in Forbes.com because I'm interested in the two terms, productivity and time management. What are you interested in, and how might you be able to use this kind of a research tool that you get to set up and forget? There are three approaches that we take to a more productive day. We have to study our psychology, how we think, how we plan, how we understand things. We have to understand the technology involved. How can we utilize and use these tools to the best of our advantage? And we have to understand the sociology of productivity. If I think one way and you think one way, and we need to be able to communicate how we're thinking, it would be worth it to do some kind of skill building around the meetings and sociology and culture of the environment that we work in. On the psychology side of productivity, in Chapter 1 of the book, Your Best Just Got Better, I'll lead you through this activity called I Am at My Best When. In fact, there's a website you can visit called atmybestwhen.com. And if you're interested in a lot more information and some videos and a lot more content about this concept of when you're at your best, you can perform at your highest, here's where to start. Pull out a pen, piece of paper, open up a Word document or a Pages document. On the top of that document, write the words, I'm at my best when. And then below there, write down 3 or 4 or maybe 5 things that you know if you were to do, if you were to be, if you were to have, the likelihood would increase that you'll have a better day. How about this one? Psychology of performance. When I was brought up, when my parents talked to me, when my coaches worked with me, they used to tell me that practice makes perfect. And that's half the story. What I've found over the years is that in fact, practice makes normal. Practice makes acceptable. Practice makes comfortable. Practice makes repeatable. I mean, do you have anybody in your life where they're always late? Right? You invite them to a party, you invite them to an event, you invite them to dinner. They ask you what time they should show up, and you say, oh, it starts at 7. Because you know if you tell them that the start time is 8, they might not make it on time. You see, people who are constantly late have practiced being late constantly. So here's 3 things that you could take a look at when it comes to your own practices and your own habits. The first one is to do an inventory of what takes up your time, energy, and focus by mid-morning most work days. And really getting to get in there and identify where does your time go, where does your energy go, where does your focus go. And what we found over time in working with this activity with clients is that if they will let themselves write down the 10, 12, 20 things that they spend time, energy, and focus doing most work days, sometimes they can take things off the list. Maybe not every day, but maybe they could do that twice a week instead of 5 days a week. Maybe they could meet with that person once a week instead of 3 times a week. Maybe they could do that one activity every 7 days instead of every 4 days. So what you're really studying here is what it takes to get your work done. Here's the next one. What tools, systems, technology, or gear do you use during the workday? That is, if you're in email and you're on a smartphone and you're using a black and red, some kind of a notebook, and if you take a look at the things that you use to get your work done, it might be worth running through an experiment to see, can I use any of these systems differently? Can I use any of these systems better? Could I upgrade to a new system that would replace me having to do as much work during the time? Oh, and here's my third one. What do you do regularly to reinvent and re-engage with your work and your life? What is it that you find yourself doing on a regular basis so that when you can hit the pause button, you get away from it all so that you can come back to it all? What are 12, maybe 15 things that you could do this year that if you were to do those, you may come back more rested, more engaged, more inspired? Okay, this is a technology tip, but this one goes a long way in being prepared and being ready to engage and be able to make your best better. What is your daily dashboard? What do you have to look at in order to figure out what gets your attention? So, for example, here you've got my daily dashboard. Generally, I have this, by the way, spread across 2 computer monitors at my desk. On one computer monitor is my email inbox, so I can see things that are coming in as those are coming in. On the other monitor, I use a list management system that I can switch between views of what it is that I'm going to work on when I'm going to work on that. So, for example, if I want to be thinking about the next quarter or the next semester of projects that I'm taking on, the things that I'm going to be doing, I want to be able to see that projects tab. If I need to know who to call, if I need to know who to email, if I want to work on a blog list, a blog inventory, or one blog entry, all I have to do right over that right-hand side is click on that tab. And there I've already pre-populated gathering ideas as I've gone through. Okay, the third area, sociology. I want you to start studying and practicing the cycle of completion. And as I see it, that cycle has 4 points. Identify, define, experiment, and assess. I need to identify what it is that I'm working toward or working on. I need to define that and understand the scope and really get in there and extract the information that's involved in making that thing happen and working toward that outcome. Now you'll notice here that the E is a little e. It takes a little bit of experimentation to know whether or not the defined experiment is worth it. I generally teach a 5-day experiment. If you can take an idea and implement it once a day for the next 5 days, or once a week for the next 5 weeks, or once a month for the next 5 months, after a repetition of 5, you'll generally know whether or not you need to continue doing that, need to continue using that. And then the 4th phase here is to do an assessment, to look back on what you've done so you can go forward into what you want to do. By the way, one of the most effective tools I've seen for this is to pull up a piece of paper or, again, some kind of a digital system and make 2 columns with a few rows. And in the columns, I'll ask you to write down someone's name in each one of those boxes. And then on the right-hand side, I'm going to start to fill in that other row with the items that I need to talk to each of those people about. Now, by the way, if you really want to maximize this idea, if I can get the 4 people that I write down, their 4 names, and then I start to collect things to discuss or to ask them, if I can get each one of those 4 people to make their own list of what I would hope they talk to me about, well, all of a sudden now we may be able to meet and handle 30 minutes worth of meeting in 20 minutes. If they have a list and I have a list and we go through that list, we might finish up 5 or 10 or maybe even 15 minutes early. That's one way to think about time management. Let me give you this one last concept when it comes to productivity and sociology. My world, my work, my experiences will be directly connected to the people that I hang out with over the next 5 years. And here's an experiment, an exercise that I walk people through in the book, Your Best Just Got Better. And what you do is you take out a piece of paper or an Excel spreadsheet if you're so inclined, and you make this matrix. So down the left-hand side, that column there, I have people's names. And then you can see here, I've labeled these other columns, and you could change this to be whatever you'd like. I remember the first time that I did this years and years ago. I actually wrote down the 5 people I spend the most time with, and I was able to ascertain generally, I was able to gather their annual salary. And some people I was able to ask and they told me outright. Other people I had to kind of guesstimate. But you know, it was interesting. You know what I found? Was that my annual salary was about the average of the annual salary of the 5 people that I hung out with. That was fascinating to me. The next thing that I did was I did days of vacation. Now, several years later, I added someone to my network. I added someone that I met along the way who actually became a mentor of mine. But we started spending time together. We have breakfast about once every 4 to 6 weeks during the year. And this guy has made it a point in retirement to take between 3 and 6 weeks of vacation at a time. And he does this multiple times per year. Well, we started spending time with each other, and would you believe that the next year when I looked back, because I had added him to my network of people that I spend the most time with, my days of vacation increased. It wasn't a goal I had set, but when I started to spend time with him and he influenced me to think about getting away from it all. The first year, Jody and I did a 10-day vacation to Costa Rica. The next year, we moved to Alaska for 24 days. The third year, we moved to Lake Tahoe for 31 days. So I don't know what we'll do this year, but I do know this. When I start spending time with people who do a little bit more than I do, I quickly follow through and do a little bit more of what I want to do. So those are some things that I hope that you get value from, that you think of, that as you go through and get your book, Your Best Just Got Better, I hope you'll add my name to your list of 5 people that you get influenced by or spend some time with. If you have any questions at all, please do send me an email, jason@womackcompany.com, or you can text message or give me a call. My phone number is 805-798-1362.